Hello, welcome back to Search Sean, and this is another Real Talk with Sean episode. And yeah, I've got three amazing guests today. So let's just get straight to the intros, and obviously we get into some hot topics and see what people think. But yeah, initially we've got Itamar. Itamar is a senior SEO director, SEO agency, StudioHawk, and host of the podcast SEO Unplugged. And we also got Liv. Liv is the SEO lead at creative search marketing agency Digitaloft. And also Gerry, and Gerry is an experienced and influential SEO consultant and was recently described as an unconventional innovator. But no, I'm big fans of all three of you, and thank you for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So yeah, let's get going because, geez, there's a lot to get through in search right now. So with Google's AI overviews and AI mode changing how users interact with search results, what strategies do you think are most effective for SEOs to stay visible, build brand trust, and drive meaningful traffic in this new environment? And we'll go to each of you, but Gerry, to kick us off, what do you think?
I was kind of hoping you'd start with somebody else. I'm basically still at that mode where I'm kind of trying to figure out everything that's happening. I say that because I feel like if we kind of jump in and say, oh, it works like this, weeks later, it's changing rapidly. I mean, one of the things I expected it to happen is to act a lot more like AI overviews that we already see and basically the expansion from that, but they're actually really different already. I hate to say it, but a lot of the practices that I'm kind of persuading my clients to do at the moment are actually what I would consider bad SEO, almost old school things. What I mean by that is we're doing things like getting ourselves listed in listicles and elements like that, which, you know, it's the kind of thing which works 10 years ago. And we're actually kind of going, yep, we actually have to do it again now to basically be included. So if somebody's searching for what are the top X and Y, being in the listicles absolutely works. The other side of it is, again, something which I don't really like, but we're talking about ourselves in the third person almost. When my clients are talking about themselves on their own websites, I'm saying, you know, refer to yourself as the brand rather than as we or us or I. And again, that kind of feels really uncomfortable. And the same with how we structure articles now as well. That's the third part of it. And that's basically kind of going, actually, we're starting to kind of write articles in a more chunky kind of way. What I mean by that is that they're sort of writing it in such a way that says, you know, this particular paragraph is about this topic. There's a heading, and, you know, reading it through, it almost feels a bit like it's been written as a kind of almost a how-to document rather than an article, which is more pleasurable to read. And all of these things feel like we're taking a step back in how the web should look and how the web should feel. But it's kind of what does actually work. I'm also investigating things like LLMs and all sorts of other kind of elements to kind of make sure that, LLMs.txt and all sorts of other elements to kind of make sure that everything's working right. And, you know, but what I would say is old school good SEO still absolutely works. And I hate to say it, but things like EEAT, which, you know, was important 2 or 3 years ago, is now as important as ever.
Yeah, I think to echo that, Ferry Cassoni, who was on recently, kind of said that, you know, obviously one of his bigger tricks now, it has been for a while, but now he's definitely doubling down on that listicle side of it. And yeah, it's kind of gone back a few years. Itamar, what do you think?
Yeah, I share a lot of what Gerry said there. I think there's aspects of, if you're a brand or like you're trying to get your brand visible with how things are changing, it's almost as if your content has to revolve around all the potential things that anyone may ask at any given point around a query. And I'm talking about this more specifically from an AI mode perspective. And granted, that is still a minute percentage of actual usage from Google search at the moment. But from a future-proofing perspective, I can only imagine that Google's probably going to want to make it a default experience for users. It's going to be introducing ads, which means that it's definitely doubling down with these rollouts as a way to also combat against the LLMs and the AI platforms like OpenAI. So with that in mind, there is an element, like Gerry said, with the old school stuff working, but I think there's also a concept of, with how personalized things are, I think if you're looking into your brand and thinking about who's your ISP, what's actually relevant to the people you target, and are you addressing any potential thing that would crop up at any point in either the buying journey or even in the usage of your product or service that somebody may ask. And I think part of that and getting that content out there as a way for these AI search platforms to actually show your, or either as a citation or sourcing a piece of content on your website. I think that's something that's really important and something that I've sort of seen a lot of anecdotally with testing that I've done.
Yeah, cool. And I just talked to Garrett Sussman as well around this, and yeah, he's just saying, like, obviously I've not really been in it, but in the Google labs, they're testing out quite a few alternative like options for AI mode, and kind of maybe go down more different route around how they break up the content, and more perhaps down the Perplexity type route rather than, because I agree, like when I've not used it that much, to be honest, but when I have gone on AI mode, I don't really particularly like how they lay out the content, if I'm honest. But I guess you got to start somewhere. But, and like we said, I was talking to Garrett, and I just feel like I think everyone agrees they're kind of rolling out these half-baked things all the time now, and it's just like, it's a bit surprising, you know, from a company like Google, but I guess they're under pressure. So
like Google roll out half-baked things all the time. It's my pet hate about them. And, you know, I'm the guy that's got a Google Stadia controller that's, you know, the games console thing they rolled out 5 years ago that they killed 6 months later. I put so much trust in Google to roll out great things and then kill it 6 months later. But sorry, I'm interrupting, Liv.
I just absolutely completely forgot about the games console. That's just unlocked a memory in my mind that I completely forgot. But yeah, I think none of us are surprised by anything Google rolls out at this point. And earlier this week, they rolled out sort of the ads guidance, and I was reading it and then got to the end and I was like, that it? Is there more? Is there can be any more help? So yeah, very happy that I'm not in the PPC world. But yeah, I think going back to the question, I definitely agree with what you said, Gerry, at the beginning of, I think the easiest way to tell who's not an SEO expert at the moment is to find the person who claims that they have all the answers. Like the person when you go on LinkedIn who says, yeah, AI mode is launched, I've got this new tool that's going to tell you absolutely everything about how you show up and how people are interacting with it, and how, you know, I've got a full strategy for how you show up for every single type of query. That is the person that you want to be steering as far away from as possible. I think the kind of strategies that are working well for us, similar to AI overviews and also similar to LLM search, is really, really powered by brand, building those big kind of like brand driving campaigns, particularly on the digital PR side, because that brand traffic is going to be traffic that's not as interrupted by AI search as well. So I think if you're building that real brand demand, that demand-driven search isn't going to have perhaps the interruptions from AI overviews and sort of like the stealing of clicks like we might see with sort of the more top of the funnel traffic. So really trying to drive that demand, particularly from digital PR. I'm glad I'm not the only one that is a bit almost cringing when we're going back to the listicles stuff. I think it really brings me back to sort of like my early days of, I think I literally just called it link building at the time, of going, okay, let's go see how we get in all of these roundups. But it really, really is working. Like some of our strategies at the moment, particularly from the LLM side of going into ChatGPT and working out what sources it's citing and making that like a hit list of, okay, what's the best place to book a holiday in Benidorm? Weird example from me. I'm not planning a holiday in Benidorm. What's the best place to book a holiday in Benidorm? Getting that list of citations from ChatGPT and going, okay, well, our brand's not listed in here. It's not listed in here. What do we need to do to make sure that we're in these kind of roundups? Which does feel a little bit backward and kind of against some of the very strategic link building and digital PR that we've been doing for so long, but it is working, it seems.
Yeah, it's interesting insights and pretty consistent. But has anyone got any other thoughts on it in terms of what they've seen? It kind of maybe works in terms of, you know, building that visibility yet.
You know, going on from what Liv has said, basically, I massively agree that basically building the brand is now more important than ever before, which actually changes the way the web kind of used to be. It almost used to be that, you could be anybody on the web, but now it feels like the AIs and tools are basically citing much more the bigger brands than ever before. And, getting into that space, being the brand that's associated with, like, I used to work at Just Eat, and basically if you're talking about takeaways, Just Eat or Deliveroo is the brand that's associated with it. If you're a starter brand, it's almost impossible to kind of break into that space now, more so than it ever was probably in the last 20 years. I think this is kind of an interesting thing where we're almost getting to the point where the established, if you're the brand for this, then it's harder to be a challenger brand in this space at the moment. So, although what Liv was talking about was like the bottom of the funnel kind of sort of brand point, but the top of the funnel, that's also where the brands are pushing into as well. And so, it's kind of really interesting. That said, one of the things I have seen is that when I've been in Google AI mode, often I've not recognized the brands that are being attributed to it. And I've been looking through them for particularly some of my clients, kind of going, these aren't even on my radar. These were brands where I was like, where's Google suddenly got all this stuff? And I look into it a little bit more, and they've got almost zero or low visibility. They've got low kind of trust almost. It's almost like Google's gone, oh, this seems relevant. I'll dump it in here. And I'm sort of looking at these kind of going, why is Google's whole algorithm not based on trust when it comes to citing some of these sources?
So this is the kind of stuff that I was looking at with LLMs, and something that I've seen a lot of is there's an aspect of the repetition of certain types of brands or things, and if something is cited enough times across different websites, it seems to be picked up without any sort of oversight. And I guess this sort of relates maybe back to the HCU updates from Google, where there was like blanket, absolute, like a huge mess for even loads of sites that were legitimate who got wiped out because the algorithm wasn't doing what it was meant to do properly. And it was only until people actually, you had manual reviewers who were actually doing the right things, but that's people doing it manually. And I think that with AI mode specifically and with LLMs, I think they're having a very tough time at actually understanding who's legit or not, and they're just going off of pure numbers. So like, could the quantity of mentions in some ways is more important than the quality? But then that comes back to what Liv was saying in terms of building brand, because when you do build brand, people do talk about you. So then you're directly getting more of these mentions put across the web, and that also helps out. But, there is still something there that's easily exploitable, in my opinion, but I don't know how far we want to get into that.
Yeah, it's a good point. And, we go as far as you want down the rabbit holes. But, I think it's an interesting one, because I think, the good thing about organic is a lot of smaller publishers or smaller companies found a avenue where they could pick up additional customers or users and stuff for relatively low cost without having the same marketing budgets as some of the bigger players, and I've been there myself with startups, and we've rivaled Apple and Samsung and stuff because we had that, resource. And now that's kind of being taken away from them. Obviously, Gerry, what you're saying with AI mode, I've not seen myself, but, that would be interesting if they are picking up random, publishers. But so far with AI mode, like AI overview, in my industry, the smaller players are kind of being just ignored. And, the bigger charities as such are the ones being visible like pretty much all the time. So it is a bit of obviously we have to see how it plays out, but that's what I'm concerned about. But, and yeah, when I had Craig Campbell on, you're just saying how it's like a Wild West now. It's like, if you ever wanted to game the system, like you could back in the day, you could do that now again, which they kind of got a grip on, and now they've kind of opened the door again, I guess. Next one, obviously, it's all related, but, search diversifies beyond Google, spanning platforms like TikTok and Reddit, Amazon, and obviously YouTube and others. How can SEOs identify the right channels to focus on and effectively balance their time and resource across them? Because, I know there's a search everywhere term now, but it's very difficult when you've got a small team and you're trying to focus just keeping the website updated, and then you also want to focus on YouTube and help this, it's difficult. So how do you recommend that people go about that, Gerry?
I mean, it's all down to the audience. That said, one of the things I would say is that you don't always expect your audience to be where like a B2B, that should not be TikTok at all. And yet, oddly, I'm seeing a lot of success of people on TikTok just because people are kind of engaging with what they're interested in on their own areas. So basically, it's almost like what is working for you. Maybe try everything a little bit, but trying everything is expensive. And if you have a neglected channel, often that can look really, really bad. So it is kind of a bit of a challenge. I mean, personally, what I'm recommending to most of my clients is to kind of almost do a little bit of like, what resources do you have? What will work? I mean, podcasts, for instance, podcasts can be repurposed into like many different places, both textually, video, audio, everything. So I do think basically that you've got the resources kind of do it, but at the same time, it's kind of really is kind of understanding where your audience is and who your audience are. I mean, demographics is so important, but again, I'm often surprised by the fact that a lot of the people on TikTok who are my friends are actually 40 plus. They're not exactly the 20-year-olds that I would have said that they were, before. Equally, 20-year-olds are not on Facebook anymore. They are, weirdly enough, avoiding that platform like the plague. And I don't really know why, but basically, Facebook appears to be dead. Everybody appears to have kind of changed their approach. And almost, it's now Instagram and TikTok for a lot of different things. But in terms of going back to the original question, what works? I think sometimes it's almost finding the gap and finding your niche and finding how it works for you. But I mean, it really, I don't have a great answer for this at all, other than basically looking at where the audience is. And what I have been doing is using SimilarWeb and tools like that to kind of look at the downstream to kind of our competitors and kind of go looking at where people are coming into their sites from, what interests and what activities people are doing above and beyond that. So almost audience profile. But I still feel like I'm kind of approaching this in a bit of a fire darts at the dartboard and hope something lands approach.
Yeah, it's fair enough. I think what's interesting when I look at advanced web ranking, what are the tools we use, and you see like, certain social platforms picking up market share and it's growing like YouTube or Reddit or Instagram or whatever, that could give you obviously some good indications on where to focus on. But we know things are changing so quickly. So, Elon Musk buys X and everyone gets off X, and then you like wasted your whole strategy around that. Itamar, what do you think?
Yeah, I think audience, like Gerry said, really important. I think it's also understanding about where they are. So for example, in America, people still love Facebook for some reason. So again, if you've got, clients that you're working on American brands, that could be an avenue or channel to look into. I do think that nowadays people are generally everywhere. I think if you compare the number of apps that people have on their phones now that they use maybe more regularly than they would have done in the past, I think it just spans across so many different types of platforms. Like, I never expected Gerry to be on TikTok, but there he is. But he might be my audience member. So it's like, it's one of those things where back then, B2Bs, you're like, okay, LinkedIn is going to be the only platform and only channel that's relevant. And now you can have those same audiences who might not be looking for that same kind of content, but they're still probably browsing through Instagram, TikTok, Reddit, all of these other platforms. And even if they come across your brand indirectly, that's still going to be beneficial because that's somebody who's directly relevant to you and what your offering is. So you basically have to be everywhere. I do think that the approach of, seeing what resources you have and trying your best to repurpose your content in the most efficient way possible, especially if you have a small team where you don't have as much resource or as much budget. And especially if you're doing everything organically, so you're not using sort of paid to push and to sort of get more reach like that and paying for it, then just try and be everywhere as much as you can be in terms of what's viable, obviously, for your business and your resources.
Fantastic. Yeah. And I think that's the point, isn't it? When you put a lot of effort into something or some effort, you should be then trying to repurpose it as much as you can. And, and that is obviously a lot more cost saving than keep making loads more and just, So definitely. Liv, what do you think?
Yeah, I think coming back to what you said about the search everywhere optimization, I feel like that is one of the acronyms that I can kind of get behind. I think there's 1,000,001 other acronyms that are driving me up the wall at the moment. But I think like organic visibility at the moment, particularly, it has been for the last few years, but I think particularly now is about being visible wherever it is your audience is searching. And like the guys have just said, like knowing where that is, not trying to kind of blind guess it. I've worked in industries where Reddit is such a, like every single person in that industry hangs out. I used to work a lot in like ed tech, like marketing to teachers. The teacher subreddits were wild. They were so in depth. I work with brands now who have subreddits about them. So I think there's elements of brand, like reputation management and brand building that can be done there. Particularly, we know over the last couple of years, it's been a bugbear of everyone, like how much Reddit appears in Google search results at the moment. Like we've got brands who really care about reputation management. One of the top results on Google is their Reddit, their subreddit. So I was like, you need someone kind of monitoring that and checking in on that, whether it's the job of an SEO team, whether it's part of the social media team. I think it's also part of that crossover that's always been a bit of a tricky line to tread as well, because it's going to depend massively on the business. Like if we work with a household name who've got a massive social media team who are probably going to be more experts in TikTok SEO than I ever will or might want to be, then we can feed in insights and make sure that we're collaborating with them and there's that integrated strategy. They might have that covered. Where we're working on sort of some of those big brand building campaigns, like Gerry said, like making sure that you get the absolute most out of everything that you're doing. But on the flip side, I've also worked with startups who don't have social media team and really appreciate that strategic input. I'm not going to, as an SEO, do that whole TikTok strategy for them. Like I don't think they want that, but making sure that if there are platforms that we know people are searching for them on and searching for their service or the solution that they offer, making sure that they are there. Like we've had interior brands who don't have a presence on Pinterest, and we can give them that starting point, the strategic recommendations, the data on how many people are searching for their kind of product on Pinterest, for them to then go to their wider team and say, actually, this is something we really need to invest in. And we can make sure then that it's got that sort of SEO integration along the way as well.
Yeah, fair point. I mean, you should be obviously doing that, but sometimes, perhaps you don't. But looking at what your competitors are doing, where they're, what platforms they're on and how they're succeeding or not succeeding, what they could possibly do better. And then maybe that gives you an angle to go in with. And yeah, is there anything else to add on this topic in terms of like finding those platforms that you should be reaching out to?
I've got to say, I passionately hate Reddit in terms of like trying to market on it. It's almost like the most toxic place possible, full of bad information. I mean, Itamar, I'm sure you've been on Reddit SEO and kind of looked at the advice, kind of gone, nope, that's really, really bad advice that looks like it was. And then it gets sucked into ChatGPT. ChatGPT seems to use Reddit as a source, and it's giving out really bad SEO advice. So yeah, sorry, I just went on a total rant there. But basically, I do find that Reddit is a very weird place. I do read it. I do go on it, mainly for gaming information and some other bits and pieces. But actual real world information, it's a bad source. It's just like experts in their own world, in their own head, who just absolutely shouldn't be kind of giving advice in this authoritative way.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we have that in the health sector quite a lot. It's a conversation that's being had in how do you approach that. Also, one thing I brought up with Gerry is like Wikipedia. If you do have a Wikipedia page, that is a good place for optimization, like a different kind of platform that you could optimize. And obviously the LLMs and stuff are learning from their data. So yeah, it's definitely like another one to add on, but it's interesting.
I was going to say, I think in the last week, I've had 2 or 3 of our clients asking about Wikipedia pages, going, should I have a Wikipedia page? Can you write it for me? What needs to be on a Wikipedia page? Can we use it to have direct, like exact match anchor text into our target pages? Maybe. But yeah, a lot of people asking about Wikipedia. I think a lot of the other different types of search engines, I feel, from clients who are just sort of solely SEO clients traditionally, they are having more and more questions. They're coming to us and going, do you do YouTube SEO? Do you think I should be on this platform? Do you think I should be on that platform? So I think businesses and marketers in general are seeing it as a lot more integrated now.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, Wikipedia is a tricky one. I've been, when you edit it, you have to be very, very particular and very careful. And I'm about to do, I keep saying this on the channel, but I am going to do a deep dive into Wikipedia. I've already got all the ammo. Very, very interesting organization, but I'll get into that in a different time. So yeah, the next one was just with increased like scrutiny and growing competition. Is Google adapting fast enough to retain user trust and market dominance? I just find it fascinating. Like I was saying this in other chats, is like, usually if an organization had the sort of backlash and legal cases and stuff like this around them, they would usually be in quite a bit of trouble right now in terms of their market share. But Google just seemed to like, I don't know if it's getting to the mainstream people. Just as SEOs, we kind of focus on it a lot, obviously. It doesn't seem like people care. There's, I'll go and Google it and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know what people think about Google's market share and are they adapting fast enough and that kind of thing. But yeah, Gerry, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're fast enough by any manner of means at all in many ways. And I don't think that the relationships that they've got with different organizations and what they're doing basically is often a little bit like, we will screw you over quicker than, you realize. So what I mean by that is they'll partner with an organization or partner with a company. And then before long, it's suddenly they're like, oh, actually, we want to charge you twice as much and bring everyone else in. And all the relationship we've got is gone. And then somehow it won't kind of work. I'm looking at a lot of relationships that I've seen with them with like companies like Uber in Google Maps and all sorts of other places where I know a little bit more than I should do. And I kind of know that basically it was a really bad, toxic situation for the companies involved a lot of the time. Anyway, the point is that Google are very bad at this kind of thing and very bad at things like their Google Home, for instance. My Google Home is probably going to flick on in a minute and try and switch on some lights or do something. But basically, it's surprising how poor a lot of the integrations are after years. And they don't seem to be kind of going in a particularly the right direction in many ways. But normal human beings that aren't in SEO or aren't in tech, they're not going to change their ways. They're not going to change to ChatGPT. They might try ChatGPT a few times, but it's not going to be what they fall back to. When they do something on TikTok, they'll often kind of go, oh, this is a great restaurant. And now I'm going to have a look at it on Google and see the actual reviews. They basically fall back to Google as being their default operating system almost. It's the we will go back to Chrome, we'll go back to Google, we'll go back to the way we know it. We're not going to change it because actually Google has the most comprehensive data. If you're looking for a restaurant, if you're looking for something, if you start on Google, you'll get to the right place. There are some exceptions to that. For instance, like Amazon seems to have dominated the product search. If I'm looking for a HDMI lead, I will go to Amazon. If I'm looking for various different things, I will usually start on a more dedicated search engine. And calling Amazon a search engine is a weird way of referring to it, but it's the way in which I use it, the way in which I kind of look for stuff. And I will kind of often default back to whichever one's the best service for it. If I want a flight, I'll go to Skyscanner. If I want a hotel, I always go to booking.com. But generally, for almost anything and everything else, Google is the way in which most users will start. And I don't see anything challenging that for a long while yet. I mean, historically, we all know that companies like Yahoo was like super dominant, and there were various other ones that were huge before Google just came along and wiped them all out. But it is interesting how I don't see that change kind of like flipping again and anytime soon. But, again, I could be wrong. Look at Facebook.
This makes me very happy, Gerry, because I referred to ASOS as a search engine the other day and a load of people laughed at me. But I'm like, if I'm looking for clothes, I'm not going to Google it. I will just go to that marketplace that I know has probably every item of clothing that I want, and then I'll search for what I want. So I'm like, technically search engine. But I got laughed at for saying that, so taking
I would hit you if you'd said Temu.
That's a valid point. And yeah, I go straight to Amazon if I want a product. And I don't know. Yeah, I think obviously it's going to take a long time to get Google out of, if it ever does. But I am seeing more people on the train and stuff. No, I'm sneaking on people's phones, but I see more people on ChatGPT and stuff that I wouldn't have obviously seen before. And more people saying, oh, I went on ChatGPT, I did this and that. They're not saying Google anymore. So ChatGPT, obviously 5 just come out. If they keep improving things and perhaps do more marketing around it and stuff. You never know. Like you say, there is, it was a time, like you say, Yahoo and AOL and like Facebook just looked like it was just, not beatable and stuff. So, it can happen. There is a time and a place, Roman Empire and everything had to fall eventually. Itamar, what do you think?
Yeah, I think the tricky thing with all of this is how well Google has coined the term search. I think search is heavily sort of like the connotations of search lie within Google for the majority of people, in my opinion. So I think that's something that's going to be very tricky for people, as long as in their heads they're like, okay, I need to find something, I need to search for something, they will instinctively probably go on Google. So there's no sort of shock as to why the market share for Google within search engines has been sort of around 90% for so many years. And it still is, right? And I think even if today ChatGPT gets around 1% of Google searches, which is still a lot, right? That's still, in terms of a raw number, that's a crazy amount. But it is still going to take time, I think, as well, until we sort of see that market share go down significantly more. The only other thing is, though, the other part of your question is or has Google adapted fast enough? And the answer is no. I think even when you compare the different types of AI platforms and models that we're seeing, if you're looking into things like OpenAI with GPT-5, for example, if you're looking into what Claude is doing, Perplexity, all of these different platforms, they seem to be advancing at a much, much faster rate than Google. And I don't know if it's because of the bureaucracy side in terms of what's happening with Google, massive organization, or if we say Alphabet or Google, in terms of also, like we mentioned before, court cases, lawsuits, all these sorts of things. But I think the one thing that's keeping Google in such a good position at this moment in time is just how well it has sort of led people to believe that search is synonymous with Google, but also in terms of the data that everyone has basically given Google without reading terms and conditions. And it knows so much about you to the point that it's a bit scary trying to go off somewhere else where it can actually now use this data. And this is where the AI mode conversation becomes really fascinating. If it is going to be hyper personalized, just how well is it going to be able to maybe let you search within AI mode, and you don't need to go on ASOS, you don't need to go on Amazon, because it's going to be able to sort of confine an answer based off what it knows about you and what you would like, but maybe find you the best deal that's somewhere else potentially, or find something that isn't available on a traditional, and I'll say search engine, because in a way, these platforms, Amazon, ASOS even are, right? Then if it's able to do that really well, I'll probably estimate that the market share will probably increase as opposed to decrease if it is really able to sort of get that. But again, AI mode, still not that many people are using it. I think that just comes back to, we are in tech and we're on top of this, whereas the average person is not like us, and we need to sort of be aware of that fact.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Gerry, was you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the fact that you guys probably are aware of this as anybody, but how many different AI products has Google come out with that I can't remember already? Like Google LM is absolutely amazing. Like it's a great product. And then there's the Google AI Studio, and then there's Google Gemini, and then there's another one that I can't remember the name of. And every time I blink, I see another product announcement by Google talking about something they've done, but I can't remember what does what, how to kind of use a particular product. And they've got this great video creation tool. And I'm like, but which tool do I need to use to get to the video creation tool or the image creation tool or something? And is it available on my phone, or is it available on laptop only? Is it available? How do I can't figure out how to use all of Google's different tools, but I go to Claude and I'm like, yeah, I've done a great job of doing exactly what I wanted to do. It's absolutely done a great job. And I'm really happily sitting there in the Claude kind of camp at the moment, which sounds a weird thing to say. I do have Perplexity Pro as well, and I'm using the Comet browser, and I think that all of these different tools are fantastic. But Google's fragmentation seems to be such a kind of killer of brand usage almost. If as a user, I'm like, I don't really know. I can't, my brain doesn't have the ability to kind of go, they've got 22 tools to do very similar overlapping things. Which one do I want to use for doing something really simple?
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think if we're confused by this and we work in the sector and we you can only imagine what the general public kind of getting their heads around it. And I think like with Google, I think what Microsoft probably did what they wanted to do in the first place and screw them up in the sense that they accelerated their AI plans, and Google had, this is what I said to Garrett, I don't know, it'd be interesting if you had like Google's original roadmap plans and where they were putting AI in that roadmap and where they had to speed it up because they clearly didn't have it all the ducks in a row, and they clearly didn't have this sort of planned out, and they're just kind of putting it together as they go. And then obviously there's new players in the market now. Apple have said they're doing their answer engine. I mean, you know, I don't know if Apple can do it. They've tried other things, but they have got a lot of money. And that's definitely what they have got. So it'd be interesting. But yeah, Liv, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's more what you were saying about Google being able to sort of go be that replacement for ASOS. I really sound like I'm sort of sponsored by ASOS now. That is not the case. But I, both as a consumer and an SEO, I'm really skeptical that I can go onto Google and they'll say, yeah, we know your buying history. We know based on this, that, the other, this is exactly what we recommend for you. We'll get it at a good price point. I just don't, as a consumer, see it happening. And I think that wider consumer awareness is also really important. Like I mentioned ChatGPT to my mum the other day and she said, what's ChatGPT? She will probably never use it. Google has done her a good enough job throughout all of her life and she'll probably stick with it. I think Google are probably complacent, like you said, with that monopoly. They know that for so many people, search is synonymous with Google and it probably always will be. But I think it's also an important point, like you said, Gerry, that I use ChatGPT and I use Google in very, very different ways. Like I booked a holiday recently. I was working out where to go. I used ChatGPT to put in like all of my information about where do you recommend I go. I then went straight to EasyJet or whoever I booked it with, used that as my search engine, and then went back to ChatGPT and said, okay, I've planned this, I booked this holiday. Here's what I like to do. Here's what I'm here for. Plan me an itinerary. It recommended me a load of restaurants that had shut down. So needed to sense check that. And then I went into Instagram to go and check if they looked any good or not. But if I'm going back to actually booking a restaurant, I'll still go via Google. Like all of my real kind of revenue, like any sort of conversion or any your money, your life kind of action from me is always done via Google. I mean, I have actually converted to TikTok Shop. I've only just about learned that TikTok Shop is actually not a scam and is not going to steal my money. But that's personal growth there. But I think the majority of any kind of money spend or really important action is always going to be done via Google. Like I'm going to ChatGPT and still actually fact checking that information via Google as well.
Yeah, I don't know like who would feel comfortable at this stage, and I know they've got AI agents, but how comfortable you feel about giving the AI agent on ChatGPT your credit card details and go and buy things. I know Steve Bartlett did it on his show to get some water or something, but I guess he's got a lot more money than me, so he can take that gamble. But yeah, no, it's interesting. Has anyone got anything else to add before we move on?
We've been trusting Alexa to kind of buy stuff for us for a long time. I mean, I say that, but I worked basically on like the Just Eat Alexa app at one point, and it was almost like, yeah, loads of people are going to try and order takeaways through the Alexa app. I don't know anybody that actually did it. I don't know of anybody who used it at all. I mean, I actually used it a lot to kind of track the status of my order, which was like, you know, how long before my Just Eat order is going to come in. But it's the user experience of trying to do things through voice and trusting agents and things like that at the moment. I don't feel like we're quite there yet. That said, I have also done exactly what Liv's done and basically done a lot of research kind of on when I'm going on holiday, trying to find out where local taxis and things like that are. And instead, I was actually using Gemini. And I did have a really, really good experience. Like it would actually find a good taxi service. It would find a good local hotel. It would find all sorts of kind of cool information. And the best part is I actually took a photograph of like a wedding invite and said, you know, plan all the stuff around this from the image. And it booked it for the wrong month. But other than that, it was absolutely perfect.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've done similar, and there was a few issues like they've had with ChatGPT, but generally it was pretty spot on, and it did create like certain little maps and stuff. It was pretty cool, but there was some, when you go to Google and did further research, you could find the inaccuracies there. But yeah, I guess like we're different. That's the thing is about getting into that mindset of like the general public, and that's why, you know, if you are a company, it's always good to do that research with actual customers and see how they're actually performing and how they're using your website, how they're using search and stuff, rather than just listening to people like us.
Yeah, Sean, do you think though that in the next 2 or 3 years though, there won't be an AI mode? It'll all be one single thing. It will be an answer engine. Google will shift away from the 10 blue links, which is already done. And if I sort of say I'm looking for a flight to Barbados, you know, it'll integrate the AI, it'll integrate the all of those different elements, the flight search and everything. And basically it will become this one single, almost Star Trek style computer. I know, nerdy, but basically you'll be able to kind of go, this is what I'm really looking for. And Google will be able to kind of give you the final almost answer. And from a marketer's point of view, from an SEO point of view, that is a horrible kind of outcome. But from a user point of view, I feel like actually that will be what people want Google and the service to kind of do for them. So I kind of am in that world where I think that, you know, the AI mode will disappear. It'll just be integrated into the kind of normal results in the same way the normal results have integrated video, image, everything else.
I think 100%. I think that's inevitable, really. I think the way, and Google pretty much said it themselves, you know, is it Liz Reed or where, you know, saying, has basically said that with her conversations and, you know, events she's been at. So I think, and like you say, for a user, I think that is actually probably the best thing. You know, that's what the people who do use ChatGPT. That's kind of why we like it. But yeah, for us, it's going to make things a lot more difficult. But yeah, going to be interesting times ahead, that's for sure. But yeah, we'll just move on to the next one because we got a couple more, and then we can wrap it up. But in terms of like, this is really interesting to me because, you know, you did the survey, Gerry, and obviously I asked 52 SEO professionals, and they've actually, maybe all of you, but Gerry filled out a survey around different things and the tools. You know, people use such a vast amount of tools now because of the times are changing, and there's AI tools now, and, you know, new ones cropping up, and some of the legacy ones maybe not keeping up with the rest of them. But in terms of like what tools or data sources or frameworks are helping you kind of better understand the AI era in terms of search behavior and uncovering new kind of visibility opportunities, it'd be really good to hear. Obviously, I said already, but advanced web ranking for me is really impressive in terms of how they're clustering things into topics rather than just general keywords focus. But yeah, Gerry, what do you think?
I'm still very much at the research stage of this at the moment in terms of how people are using it. And I'm very loath to kind of jump. All the tools that I've been looking at are kind of on the right path. I've looked at the SEMrush ones. I've looked at Dixon Jones's one. I'm trying to remember the name of it. Itamar, what's the name of it? And
Wakey?
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you. And there's so many others at the moment that are kind of coming out of there at the moment. But the problem is the fact that they're all based on a very interesting kind of tight kind of view of it almost. I don't really know how we're going to be able to kind of monitor it. And one of the things that I dislike about the AI overview at the moment is, although they've got references and although they've got kind of like links to the sources, they don't really push them. You can't see them. You really do have to dig in to kind of find out who they're really talking about. And only us as the SEO people are kind of going, oh, I'll click to see if our brand's mentioned in there. So basically at the moment, a lot of my work at the moment is very much in a case of, you know, telling my clients what's best practice and also tracking how much traffic's coming in. I've built dashboards for each of my clients to sort of see how much AI traffic's coming in. And I think a lot of it is hidden because a lot of it is coming in as being direct or unknown, where it's not trackable. Perplexity adds a parameter, ChatGPT adds a parameter, but many of them, it doesn't seem to kind of add any differentiation. And refer is being lost because it needs something to kind of come in through that isn't coming in from the apps, particularly from Apple. So short version, I'm still very much in the dark. And know full well that this will be a focus of mine in the next couple of months. And I've said that repeatedly, that, you know, I'm still in that learning phase. But I think that's what the best thing about SEO is the fact that we're perpetually learning. If I ever kind of left SEO, it would be for a job where, you know, I'd have to learn again. And that's what I love about SEO.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting, obviously, like we're kind of doing an analysis of the tools we're using and how they're keeping up and what they're offering. And yeah, obviously some, I won't mention names, but some bring out like cool features and then put it straight behind a paywall. And it's like quite frustrating because that's the kind of stuff you want to look at rather than the old school metrics and stuff they give you. But yeah, it's what do you think?
Yeah, I think, you know, anyone who's going to claim, sort of like what Liv said earlier, it's like anyone who's claiming that they've like completed it, mate, sort of, you know, AI search is just lying to you. And I think with the tools that are coming out, I've tried at least around 4 or 5 of them. And it's quite interesting to just compare methodologies, compare what they're actually outputting, compare like what they think people actually want. And when you sort of dig deeper into where they're getting the data from, what are they sort of scraping, what are they presenting, where's the sort of calculations that they're doing to try and turn things into sort of topics and entities, as opposed to, because obviously when it comes to prompting, every prompt most likely is going to be different. It's almost like when Google said that, you know, that the vast majority of searches people make are new searches or something that people haven't searched for before. So when you take that into account, a more colloquial type of setup that is sort of LLMs, where it's a lot more, you have a lot more freedom to give more context. So that's a very tricky thing to track, because with most of, if not all of the tools that sort of I've checked out, you do have to either add your own specific prompt in, or they just have a massive database of prompts. And most of the time, you're not really going to know what those prompts are. They might not even fully be fully relevant to you and your brand. So there's so much that we don't know. I think the only time that we're going to get actual useful data, especially with AI mode, is as soon as ads are introduced, because then that is the incentive that Google would want to place on advertisers if they're able to provide data across AI mode specifically. With LLMs, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, I have no idea. They might never actually be transparent in terms of understanding the types of trending topics. I know in ChatGPT, like when you start making the search, it will sort of do like the auto suggest that YouTube has. So there's that, which can be helpful. But at the end of the day, at this moment in time, as of when we're filming this, so, you know, summer of 2025, there really isn't anything concretely out there that is able to help marketers understand what the hell is going on in an accurate way. So what does that mean? That means that, well, you kind of just need to use your own common sense, make some searches that's relevant for your clients or your projects, whatever you're working on, and try and see what's the sort of citations being mentioned, how is the information being displayed. The biggest worry I have is when the personalization aspect comes into it, because if the tools are all using the same type of, you know, centers to scrape information, then that's only one particular piece of context that it's getting that information from. So I could make the same search as Gerry, we could be sat in the same place, but we'll probably get different results. And that's going to be a problem as well. So the hyper personalization that ChatGPT at the moment is very good at, it's very good at remembering things that you've told it in the past, as well as AI mode, which supposedly has that personalization in place. It becomes an absolute minefield for marketers to know what is actually going on. And that's the big worry at this moment in time.
Yeah, I mean, in the survey, the results were, you know, interesting. I'd say a lot of different tools that people were kind of exploring, and tools like Profound and SparkToro came out quite a lot in terms of, apart from the usual crowd. But yeah, it's interesting. And I think when I was speaking to Gerry, he was kind of saying that perhaps the ideal scenario going forward would be like broken down into topics, as I said earlier, but also you could like adapt it based on like certain personas, as you say. Like, okay, it'll still be like not exact because everyone's different, but if you could break it down into personas and topics, could get some idea of how you're showing up. And because like right now you can track things on topics, but as you say, it's totally different. Like the example I gave was like, if we're tracking recipes, we're tracking recipes or type queries because people baking things for charities, you know, recipes for that. But if you're doing ingredients for cakes or whatever, you're tracking that for a completely different reason, so it's the context behind it and the kind of personas that are looking at that. So yeah, hopefully, that could be something that people look into. But Liv, what do you think?
Yeah, I think very much to echo what the others have said, not a lot is helping me at the moment when it comes to working out. I think there's the two elements of it. There's a lot of elements of it, but working out sort of the visibility. Again, I tried a lot of different tools. I was speaking to the founder of Authoritas, which is the rank tracking platform that we use, and he was saying has about a month ago, he said he had on his radar about 60 different companies that he was actively tracking that claimed to have some sort of like AI visibility tool. It's probably gone up again in the last month. Loads went up within like a day of AI Mode being announced, which is obviously the one that to not touch with the barge pole. But it's a tricky one, I think, especially when that personalization comes in. Nothing massively is helping us, so I'm trying to go with what I know to be more concrete data. So doing similar to Gerry and being like, what is actually driving referrals? Also, where is that traffic going? I know it might not be the most complete, comprehensive data set, and I know it's not going to account for total visibility of all the time the brands mentioned and not clicked on, but it's a good indicator of trend. And if you look at where that referral traffic from ChatGPT, Perplexity, wherever is being driven, you can also have a bit of an idea as well of what types of searches it's appearing for, if it's all going to your informational content or if it's actually going to some of your biggest revenue driving pages, if you can attribute any revenue to it as well. It's very different types of searches. I think in terms of opportunities, it feels, again, like we said earlier, a little bit rudimental, like going into ChatGPT and saying, what's the best whatever service or product you have, looking at what's being cited by ChatGPT and then being like, there's my hit list. We're doing it similarly on a content front. If you're really needing to pursue informational content, looking for sort of that target keyword or target topic in an AI overview or in AI mode and going, okay, well, I cover this topic, this subsection. There's actually, Google is pulling out relevant information about all of these different types of sort of subtopics that I'm actually not referencing on my site. Maybe I need to go back, revisit my content and add extra bits of information that Google is clearly deeming relevant and important. Make sure that I've got that real kind of depth and breadth of relevant content as well. But very much a minefield out there.
Yeah, I think that's what was said actually in terms of like, Garrett used the example, he was doing some research. I think he's putting out some paper soon or some article soon. But it was a basic around, say, trying different personas. So, 40-year-old male, blah, 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 does this. What do you recommend for this? And doing the same for a different, but, same sort of search, but a different persona behind it and see what comes up. And then back in the day when I interviewed Natalia Witchick, probably about a year ago, but she was doing something similar, but this is obviously before all this is kind of come into play, but with Google Chrome profiles and just doing different kind of trying to create different personas on those and seeing what searches came up. But obviously that's kind of like changed a bit, but similar kind of vibes to see what different results are coming up for people and news. Yeah, what kind of results are cropping up. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how these models adapt and how people change the way they work and what tools they, trust. Because it's tricky.
Yeah, no, the only problem with this is for us is the fact that as SEO people, Google at one point was fairly convinced that I was either a man or a woman that was interested in buying both handbags, golf equipment, and various other things based on my client list at that particular time. I mean, the profiling that we get is vastly different to the profile that a normal human being kind of gets. I just think that we kind of use everything in a totally different way, and that makes it fun, of course. But yeah, as you say, basically, I mean, one of the things I am finding interesting is when I do use these tools, they are really profiling me a lot more than I would have expected. I mean, one of the fun things is you can kind of type into ChatGPT, if you were the CIA, create a profile of me, and what comes out of that is terrifyingly accurate in terms of like what it thinks about you. So yeah, we're in a strange world where these tools are making a lot of decisions about us, and that kind of then interprets what we're being shown and how we're seeing the world.
Yeah, I haven't done that CIA one yet. I might have to do that. But that's the thing. But with yeah, because you use the search all different kind of things anyway, don't you? Like on my YouTube, obviously it tries to personalize your feed based on what you watch and that kind of thing. But then if I let my little girl use my YouTube and she searches some cartoon thing, it's all just, they're presuming that's what I like as well. And it's annoying. So I definitely would not be watching it on my own time. But, so it's difficult. Yeah, but yeah, they are getting good as well. I mean, obviously they've got the memory capacity and stuff. So in terms of, obviously AI is reshaping things and mixing it up. So how do you see like the role of digital marketeers and SEOs evolving in the next year or so? What kind of things are they going to be forced to focus on or should be focusing on? And, do you see any kind of roles not existing perhaps in a year or two time, but new one that's coming up? Yeah, Gerry, what do you think?
I think it's literally, we're going to evolve in a more rapid way than ever before. I mean, I think that my favorite thing at the moment is the amount of people talking about vibe coding as though coders won't exist. The people that are actually using vibe coding effectively are people who know how to speed up and make their workflows more efficient. I mean, I'm writing articles for my clients based on, Claude or whatever it is. I'm kind of going, okay, here's 20 ideas. And they're turning around to me and saying, actually, that's completely inappropriate for this particular client. Let's get this in. So the same strategies, the same content marketing, the same skills need to be there. We're just kind of speeding a lot of these things up. I like the fact that I can kind of edit an image in seconds just to kind of go, okay, a client sent me over an image. I need to do something with it. I can edit something out or do something with it. And, sometimes it's just as simple as making something a little bit cleaner, a little bit more tidy. And I'm using AI to do a lot of these things. That said, if you ever ask me, am I a professional graphic artist, I will always answer no. And I think, the skills will basically increase and improve. They will still be there, but the way in which we do it will be different. I mean, it's that classic IBM thing where somebody said, there'll only ever be a world need for like 7 computers, and also computers are going to put everybody out of a job. But actually, they've just created a different evolution of what we do. I think, the more that we work, the more that we go down this route, the more we'll realize that actually we're needed to kind of shape how LLMs and Google and everybody's kind of interpreting what we do. I don't think I'll be out of a job in the next 2 to 3 years, certainly, but I know that my job's going to change. And I think the biggest thing is I'm going to have to spend probably half a day a week kind of learning what's going on and listening to more and more podcasts, probably AI generated podcasts, but, podcasts nonetheless of what actually is happening.
Yeah, interesting. I think obviously the data's kind of showed that maybe at the executive level, kind of the, people getting into the industry, it's becoming a bit more difficult, less opportunities there for them. And maybe some people said that only the strongest are going to survive, the ones that are really adaptable and willing to learn and adapt and not stick to like some maybe old school ways of working. But Itamar, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's just the evolution, which is kind of natural, right? And I think it applies specifically across the SEO industry because the aspect of complacency is still very much a thing, right? Like if you were complacent, towards the end of the noughties in terms of how you did SEO versus how it then changed within the following years, Panda, Penguin, etc., then that would have been a problem for you. And I think now we're at that next sort of crossroads where it's like you're going to have the SEOs who need to make a decision. Either you're going to adapt to understand and learn this new technology, how it works, and try and figure out how you can then use that to your advantage in terms of the work that you do moving forward. Or you could just be complacent and say, well, this is all terrible and I'm not going to change anything. And then we'll see, I guess, who comes out on top in the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, that's valid. Good way to look at it. Liv, what do you think? Where do you see it going?
I think it's just going to really kind of hold a mirror up to shady or lazy SEO tactics. Like the first SEO role I had was in-house for a brand that I won't mention, but had a team of 100 copywriters and did really, really well on a strategy of just endless content, just 100 copywriters just churning out blog content, a new category page that's just popping up every 5 minutes. And they did really, really well. I don't know how much of that was just vanity traffic. And I think the teams of 100 copywriters, I think probably should have been gone a long time before I even started, but I don't think is going to be a viable SEO strategy anymore. I've always found from an SEO perspective, from a content strategy, I'm always generally doing less and less in terms of pieces of new content. I think vanity metrics are going to be a lot harder to hide behind. You're not going to be able to say, yeah, we've been churning out 10 pieces of blog content a month. Look how much your traffic's gone up, because it won't, because that's all just going to be AI overviews and AI mode as well. I also see it a lot more integrated with all other areas of digital marketing, like we talked about brand earlier. I've always seen brand as a bit of a nemesis to SEO. I think working in an agency, the amount of times that I've been brought onto a call with a client's brand director, he says, no, can't use this keyword because it's not on brand. Oh, this isn't on brand. That's not on brand. The amount of, it's been sort of an end. Jerry is vigorously nodding. It's just been an endless sort of headache for SEOs. But I think we do need to become the brand team's best friend at this point. There's going to be a lot more integration with all other areas. We talked about SEO. We talked about brand, other platforms like Reddit, like Wikipedia. You need to make friends with your PPC team, work out what insights they're having, what they can share about what they're seeing from everything that Google's throwing at them, because it's going to be an interesting journey for them as well. I think it's just going to see even more integration from kind of every area of digital.
Isn't Google just telling them to switch on PMax and ignore it? I mean, the thing that I've experienced with paid at the moment is it seems almost like Google are kind of going more and more hands-off approach to people. And I know the paid people kind of hate me for saying this, but you know, they are finding that Google is increasingly trying to push them out of the whole system thing. And that is actually bad for brands, because actually paid strategy and paid people, they're not just kind of like typing in endless keywords. They're actually doing a lot more for it. And it is bad, actually, the way in which Google are treating the paid teams as well as just the organic teams. Sorry, I'm kind of defending them at the same time as taking the mick out of them, but yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch that space. Obviously, it's not something I fully concentrate on, but with all this AI PMax stuff, it is interesting to see actually what control they have got over it. I mean, you know, if 80-90% of your campaigns is automated, then what are you putting into it, you know, injecting into it? I think it's fascinating. Like, I just, you know, are we going to go back to the days where there's like this digital marketing person and they were expected to do the social, the paid, the SEO, the other stuff, you know, because we've got AI tools now, because you look at Spotify and Duolingo and companies like this now, they're saying that if an AI do it, you can't hire anyone. You know, these companies are starting to do this now. And like I said, there's less jobs now for people leaving university and stuff than ever before. So it is a concern. Obviously, we're in it and kind of got decent enough experience. So I guess we're kind of safer than a lot of people. But when, you know, you're entering the market, I don't know what is going to be expected of you. You know, you see it on CVs on LinkedIn all the time where there's SEO persons expected to do this and that and this, and you're like, well, that isn't really the job that SEO should be doing, but you know, people need jobs, which is understandable. So yeah, I just hope we don't go back to that, because actually, you know, you can do a much better job if you're focused on, obviously you should be working with other teams more, but also you'll be doing a much better job if you could just focus on the SEO stuff. I'll stop rubbing on, but it's been an awesome chat. And, you know, really good to hear your points of view. You know, really respect all three of you and really appreciate you coming on today. So, yeah, thanks for hanging out with me and having this chat.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank